I'd like to introduce now Ignace Anfalovas, who will be presenting Spam Wars, the Chronicles of Our Fight for Network Integrity. This is Ignace's first time presenting at NANOG, and it is an absolute pleasure to have him speaking with us today. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Aren't you guys sick of spam? I know I am. Ever since I started working in IT, spam has been one of the most annoying abuses I had to deal with. From analyzing email headers, altering out anti-spam policies, to integrating third-party systems, nothing seemed to properly solve this issue. The constant and unending fight provided me with an understanding that I cannot win this fight alone, and then the fight against spam must happen at every point of the delivery chain on this seemingly innocent yet disgusting internet abuse. And so I have fought. I fought the spam while I was working as a mere IT administrator trying to secure our mailboxes from the spam received. I fought the spam while I was working in customer support at a hosting brand, trying to secure the internet from abuse, spam being sent to the internet. And even now, when I'm working as an engineering manager of the platform team at IPXO, a leased marketplace for IP resources, I'm still fighting against spam, aiming to find a solution which would help us reduce the trash being sent to the internet. As previously mentioned, IPXO primarily focuses on IP leasing. Organizations that have underutilized IP resources can add those resources to our IP market, while companies that do not have those resources and need those can lease those. We, on the other hand, we look after the reputation and the authorization part. As I mentioned, since we secure the reputation of IP resources, the reputation scans are being done before the IPs are being put into the marketplace, as well as during and after the leases. As our marketplace gained recognition, it grew. And as the number of IPs onboarded onto the marketplace increased, so did the abuse complaints. We quickly saw a problem. Most of the abuse complaints received were spam abuse reports. And these reports originated from IPs leased in our marketplace. Dealing with such cases required manual intervention and were often ineffective. Moreover, we noticed that Spamhaus started listing our IP resources in block lists faster than we could clean those up. And this directly impacted us financially and damaged our reputation. During this presentation, we would like to share our experience that we gained throughout the year 2023 in dealing with spam, and lead you through our journey of how we dealt with spam at IPXO and the iterative approach that we used in determining the focus, making the decisions, validating those decisions using the data, then strategically implementing those solutions, and comparing the projected and actual results, and how this approach was used 3 times throughout the year 2023 in making major improvements in our platform. We mainly focused on 3 focus points, which were the RDNS and PTR changes, Know Your Customer or KYC policy changes, as well as Resource Public Key Infrastructure or RPKI infrastructural changes. Let us begin with some data. On the left side of the screen, you can see the number of /24 subnets being listed in Spamhaus block list, which was steadily increasing from the start of February up until April of year 2023. Whereas on the right side of the screen, you can see our internal data from our abuse report parsing system, which showed that while the number of spam cases was relatively low, it was sometimes from 50 to 100% of all the cases that we have received. This led us to drawing these conclusions. Spam originated from our marketplace IPs, and that number was increasing. Yet, our internal monitoring system did not show such trend. Thus, our first course of action was to improve our abuse case visibility. And that is how we arrived at our first focus point, which is PTR and RDNS. While we investigated the cases that were not received by our abuse reporting systems, but yet marked as spam in Spamhaus, we noticed that a lot of those cases included the use of our internal RDNS infrastructure. Similar to how DNS can point a domain to an IP using an A record, RDNS can point IP back to domain using a pointer record, or PTR. PTRs are primarily used to improve email deliverability. In most cases, PTRs would get updated once or twice every 6 months. But while analyzing the use of PTRs within our RDNS infrastructure, we noticed that there are some peculiarities. Mainly, PTRs are set to obviously fake domains, like Microsoft.com, Yahoo.com, Google.com. Sometimes Yahoo or Google would be with 3 O's, or Microsoft would be with double T, and stuff like that. And we noticed that PTRs would be changed more frequently than expected. Sometimes would be changed with like a week or 2 weeks. So to be quickly able to find the good clients that were using this, our system and abusing that, we have developed a tool which would automatically scan our internal systems for PTR changes and link those changes with the tenants that used our platform. This has massively increased our ability to detect the clients who frequently modified the PTRs or used fake domains or subdomains. We have also developed an additional tool which would disable RDNS control in case such abnormalities were observed. On top of that, we disabled RDNS control by default for all of our new clients, fully enabling it only for those that can prove a proper use of the resources. So what we expected of those changes? Well, we thought that disabling the PTR, if we disable the PTR or RDNS control for the spammers, one of 2 things would happen. Basically, they would not be able to send as much spam or no spam at all, which would mean that the number of Spamhaus listings would decrease, or we would at least see the rise of abuse reports received, which would mean that we would have better abuse monitoring in this case. We also experienced that there will be some bad feedback in forums from the clients, that the abusive clients, as they would say, that our services are no longer useful to them, and that would incur chargebacks from those abusive clients, resulting in decline in sales, although we expected this situation to normalize in around a month or so. Within a month, as we looked at our data we gathered after the implementation of these changes, we saw a decrease in subnet listings in Spamhaus lists. As you can see on the graph on the left, the number was steadily going down to appropriate levels, which suggested that we might have hit a critical blow to spammers that lease IPs from our marketplace. However, even though the initially abuse report statistics were good in terms of overall number of abuse cases received, we expected the spam cases to make around 35, maybe even less % of all the abuse cases that we have received, which clearly did not happen. And thus, our second guess was that the spammers, they have stopped sending spam for a while analyzing our changes. And in time, they would most likely start to abuse again. Thus, the drop of the listing in Spamhaus. And sure enough, around the mid-April, we started receiving a lot more spam and overall abuse reports. You can see that in the graph on the right side of the screen. It gave us the expected results. We finally saw a clear view of the real situation. Furthermore, we received our first expected largest spike of chargebacks due to those unhappy, abusive clients, which is shown on the graph on the left. All of this suggested that our initial focus was fruitful. The spammers are issuing chargebacks, which, according to our terms of service, meant that we can suspend their services, which would ultimately mean a ban from a marketplace. But it was not all rainbows and sunshine, as another problem complementing the initial problem surfaced, or as I like to say, the problem mutated. We noticed that the spammers no longer needed to use our internal RDNS systems. We would just send it all without it. They also got better at tricking our KYC, or Know Your Customer procedure, which meant that, all in all, we will start receiving a lot more customers trying to onboard our system, as well as a lot of more reports being sent to our systems, which meant that a lot of more manual work needed to be done. And since there's a lot of manual work to be done, there's bound to be some human error. This gets us to focus number 2, the KYC, or Know Your Customer process improvements. Up until May of 2023, we, of course, used KYC to approve the tenants, but as we saw in retrospective, it was a better tool to collect the client's information for marketing purposes. After the changes of PTR and RDNS systems and their use policies provided to be only helpful in only short-term and more in monitoring sense, and we noticed that the number of spam cases spiked again. We noticed that the spammers, even the ones that were already banned, are still using our platform, only as in different entities. Some of those entities were newly registered, whereas others were registered on our platform long before the changes of RDNS use policies. This showed that abusers most likely made some risk assessments and created another entities, verifying those for redundancy purposes. And since the level of spam was still at large, another strategic decision was made that we must prioritize KYC procedure improvements. So up until May of 2023, we had a number of approved clients fluctuate between 35 and 50%, which we analyzed and decided that to be able to combat the spam issue properly, this number needs to go down to around 30% or even lower. Furthermore, after some analyzation, our data showed that most abuse-generating industries were infrastructure, hosting, and VPN, which in total combined to around 70% of all abuse cases we received. And that pointed us towards some additional improvements aimed specifically at these industries. So we tackled this problem by introducing these improvements. No more clients with questionable internet presence would be able to use our services, as we would review and revalidate the email addresses and the websites provided. And in some cases, if we notice some issues or peculiarities, we would also review the legal documents, which would be later used to conduct lookups in USA and EU sanction lists. For more of a industry-focused changes, since 75% of our clients had clients of their own, which generated abuse, we started to ask those clients to show us how we dealt with, what were their abuse handling policies, to inspect any issues that might arise there. And we also implemented additional procedures for high-risk countries. So our main expectation for these changes was to be able to pinpoint the existing and new clients that could no longer comply with our updated KYC policies, which that would allow us to suspend their services and ultimately ban them from our platform, which we expected would result in more chargebacks. We also understood that these changes would make a lot of abusers cause turmoil on forums, trying to pretend to be these innocent users that were wrongfully prosecuted by these outrageous policy changes, hoping to get more public support and make us change our decision. Of course, none of that diverted us from our goal as we proceeded with the implementations. After the initial changes were made, which was around the first half of May 2023, the initial customer journey approval rate continuously dropped from around 50% to around 25% or even less in late July. The improved KYC processes also led to a higher risk indicators for 12 industries, most of which were related to infrastructure or hosting. The changes also allowed us to push for the clients for better abuse management, which meant that less work had to be done on our side and thus more time on other cases. With the KYC changes, we no longer allowed our platform to be used. I mean, the services were suspended to around 10% of our customers, as we were marked as no longer meeting the minimum KYC approval ratings. Later on, these customers were banned in 2 waves, mainly affecting companies from 7 countries. Now, if the negative feedback was something we expected, then the retaliation using DDoS was something we did not. One especially angry group of clients starting DDoSing us for 2 weeks during the nights. Of course, when you work as a platform engineer, DDoSes are not something that uncommon, but we usually experience it that once or twice in a month. After a week of DDoSes by this group of clients, angry clients, they tried every possible endpoint, public endpoint that we had for our platform, yet they only managed to cause small disruptions and small downtimes for the platform, which is the place where we usually conduct all of our businesses. But since the clients were relentless, they later switched their focus on the website, which was the face of our operation. And there seemed to be an issue with the website that it could not scale fast enough, and even when scaling, it posed another issue of communicating with the clients. But after around 2 weeks, we were able to solve all these issues, and then in the end, the abusers stopped DDoSing us. But after we calculated what was the impact of that, we summed up that ultimately the website was down for about 6 hours in 2 days, which damaged our reputation. And after we later were informed by our marketing team, it also affected our index in Google, which resulted in loss of traffic. We also experienced some financial damage due to the waste of the chargeback cases. In fact, they turned out to be relatively hard to win. Even when providing all the evidence and the logs and the communication with the abusive clients and denoting that their actions does not align with the term of service that they agreed upon, it was like 50-50 whether we would win or lose. Moreover, the number of spam reports was still significantly higher than predicted, and our analysis discovered that we have been receiving spam reports for IPs that were actually not in use, at least according to our systems. And so the problem, it again mutated as we started to deal with mutated issue, the subnet route hijacking. Now, some of the hijacks were a direct result of our clients not bothering to contact their ISP and end the announcements on time, as they would state, well, the ISPs would need more time, and it's not their fault, and like, why don't you contact the ISPs and stuff like that. But we also suspected and later confirmed that some group of abusers is scanning our marketplace for subnets, not least for a month or even longer, and then uses information to fake the letter of authorization, which ISPs would accept without a lot of questions. And once those subnets were leased, the clients would not be able to use them properly, since hijacks messed up the routing. What was even worse, our internal systems automatically linked the spam received, the spam cases received, to the active leasee, which meant that the clients who just started the lease of a hijacked subnet would start receiving our reports and notifications to immediately fix those issues, when in reality, we did not even start the announcement yet. Solving such hijack cases turned out to be quite time-consuming, and as abusers would not respond, and ISPs would take a long time to react. Some of the ISPs would not even have a proper contact for such cases, which made us take this whole situation into our own hands. And that is why we focused on another of our focus point, which is RPKI infrastructure. We also experienced some financial damage due to the waste of chargeback cases. They turned out to be relatively, sorry, one second. On the left side of the screen, you can see the number of hijacks of /24 subnets increasing after the changes of KYC policies and the ban of bad actors. While on the right side of the screen, you can see that what time it took for our abuse case handling team to deal with such cases. Note that while on average, the case handling time, or marked in the blue line, it increased from around 1.5 days to 3 days, the average of 10% of the longest case abuse handling cases for hijacking increased from 3 to 5 or even more days in some cases, which meant a lost revenue, such subnets would not get leased, or even worse, such subnets would get leased, and the leasees would not be able to properly use those, and then they would issue rightful chargebacks. So what we did, we prepared the infrastructure for automation for BGP parking, as well as RPKI control to increase the route security. We also reduced the manual work required for hijack cases by semi-automating the communication and the ROA issuing. By introducing subnet quarantine, we tackled the reputational damage issue. This system, it did not allow the subnets to go back into the market in case hijacked or other block listings were observed during the lease. We also started issuing the handling fees for clients not willing to end the announcements on time, which quickly improved the situation for hijacking done by the legitimate users. To combat the ISPs not willing to react on time, we integrated the known ASN block lists into our own reputation system, which would not allow the assignment on risky ISPs or their RSNs. One of the challenges we expected was the unwillingness of clients to pay the abuse handling fees, but it turns out that it was a great motivator for them to stop the announcements on time, as it worked real well. On the other hand, the main challenge would be convincing the IP holders to delegate the full RPKI control or some of the RPKI control on our side, which meant that they would either have to give control of all of their IP resources allocated to their organizations by RIRs to our organization, or host some additional infrastructure on their side to be able to sub-delegate RPKI control only for those IPs that are listed in our marketplace. What helped us out in this situation was that we had some IPs delegated to our organization across RIRs. And we were able to use that to initiate RPKI control adoption and show that as an example to our clients of how RPKI delegation or subdelegation should be done, and how we dealt with those resources and this responsibility. And from September of 2023 to February 2024, the number of RPKI-controlled IPs in our marketplace has steadily grown to approximately 30% of all marketplace IPs. This allowed us to react much faster and have some announcement control on our side, which helped to steadily normalize the whole hijack situation. In this graph, you can see exactly that. The number of /24 subnets hijacked has increased after the KYC changes and even kept increasing after the RPKI control adoption was initiated. But as the number of RPKI controlled IPs increased in our marketplace, the number of hijacked subnets eventually decreased to appropriate levels. The change has also steadily reduced the time it took us to handle hijack cases, as there were less intervention required. Again, as the RPKI-controlled IPs were nearing 30% of all IP onboarded into our marketplace by February 2024, we noticed that average hijack case handling time, marked in blue line, decreased to around 1.5 days. And the average of top 10% of most time-consuming hijack cases, marked in purple, reduced to a bit more than 3 days. Note that the reduction of hijack case handling time was most heavily impacted by RPKI onboarded IPs. This meant that for subnets that we had RPKI control done on our side, the average case solve time, here marked in purple, was around 1 day, whereas non-RPKI onboarded IPs, the average case handling time, marked in yellow, fluctuated between 3 and 4 days. But as the number of onboarded IPs increased over time, the average case handling time of all marketplace IPs decreased significantly. Now, I would like to bring up the customer journey to highlight the changes that we ultimately did throughout the year to combat this spam issue. In black, you can see the original and unchanged journey steps and systems and processes. Note that the journey steps are marked above the top horizontal line, while our internal systems and processes are marked below it. The processes and systems also have time frame marks that denote that the specific processes or systems are when the specific processes are in effect. The blue line, in blue, we also marked the customer steps, systems, or processes that existed before the changes but have been majorly improved. And in green, we have marked the new functionalities and processes that have been developed for us to be able to reach the goals required. Now, the functionalities that helped us solve the spam issue the most were the tenant KYC procedure, which triggered the tenant verification process, both marked in blue, meaning that we were majorly improved. IP reputation scan improvements were also helped us during this whole process, as well as BGP parking and RPKI route and object management, as well as hijack monitoring, which was in effect throughout all of the customer journey and deployed throughout the year 2023 for us to be able to properly handle the spam issue. Here, we reflect on the situation before and after the changes. Each of the changes were made. Our initial KPI for tracking the improvements on spam issue, again, was the number of subnets leased from our marketplace, but listed in spam house block list. Throughout the year, the situation improved and worsened. However, after each setback, we were able to pinpoint the next focus based on the data we had. And after the latest changes, we gradually gained RPKI control for 1/3 of IPs in our marketplace. We were able to reduce this KPI to a real good value, which last time I checked was last week, and it was 0 subnets listed in spam house. So perfect. Here is the graph of other KPI we observed, the number of spam cases compared to all the cases received. As you recall, the original issue was that the number of subnets listed in the spam house was large, while the total number of abuse cases we received was relatively small. So, of course, by the first change, we improved the monitoring of the whole situation, and which let us see the clear view of how things were really happening. And our goal was to reduce the number of spam, which, while the marketplace was constantly growing, we compared to the number of all the cases, abuse cases we received. Now, as the graph shows, after each major change within our platform, we experienced both improvements and setbacks that helped us determine the next focus points. And ultimately, we had the spam cases to be around 5 to 10% of all the cases we received, which we saw as proper, normal KPI, and was agreed that the issue was resolved and we achieved our goals. Now let us quickly revert to our iterative approach towards solving spam problem. After noticing the issue, we began with the changes of our DNS and PTR use policy, which improved monitoring and automation to be able to spot the malicious clients better. After minor cleanup of those clients, we noticed that bad clients are still using our services. So we updated our terms of services and KYC procedures, which helped us not only to get rid of the spammers, but also not allow them back on our marketplace under other entities. After the spammers decided to just use the subnets without our authorization and hijack the routes, we retaliated by deploying infrastructure for hijack monitoring, RPKI control, and BGP parking, which allowed us to spot and react on hijacks much faster. We also introduced service quarantine and fees for abuse case handling and the IP reputation cleaning, which majorly improved our service reliability and provided us with some financial gains when the clients did not properly handle the announcements or the abuse. And our key learnings on all of this are that after spotting an issue, you analyze the data you have, check the trends and whether they support your resolve plans. Do not get upset if you do not see the immediate effect resulting from your changes. It might take a combined complementary approach to reach the goals you want. And most importantly, you cannot be afraid of taking some bold actions like losing some customers or revenue, as in the long run, you can restore the revenue, but restoring your reputation is a much harder task. That's all from my side. Thank you for listening. Now, we can move to the questions.
Hello, Sergey Masayedov, NetArt Group. I've checked during your presentation, I've checked with our systems, the systems we are managing, and what I found is that during the last 3 years, we tried to block at least receiving emails from all the network managed by IPXO. Well, obviously, this reputation was earned due to poor management of the leased networks. So I'm happy finally to see that the situation is changing. However, fixing the reputation could take some time. In your presentation, you didn't mention anything about abuse report handling. Could you, is there anything changing in this field? Could you elaborate?
You mean our processes for abuse case handling?
The reports, yeah.
Well, we have some part being done automatically by abuse report parsing tools, and other part which we use AI for help us to parse the reports and do the appropriate actions. And the other part of the reports which is unable to be parsed by AI or the system, the abuse case handling system, we do those manually. And I mean, the abuse case is not my field, handling is not my like field and not my where I work at, let's say like that. So I cannot be too sure about that, but mostly how it goes. We use three systems: manual work and automatic work to handle those cases.
Yeah, this. Could you tell what is the minimum term of network lease?
Could you repeat?
What is the minimum term of the network lease?
1 month.
1 month?
Yeah.
Probably this is the reason.
Might be, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Tony Tauber, Comcast. Thanks for making this presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's an underexplored area. What couple of questions. One is, what are you thinking about other abuse forms and listing places besides spam and spam house? And yeah, that's one question. The other is, you know, for the ISPs, obviously reputational damage accrues to them as well. And I think maybe to the previous questioner's point is like, you know, it becomes less attractive for us to engage with resources registered to, you know, places that have repeated reputational problems, let's say.
Yeah, well, for the second question, I mean, our abuse case handling team, they always deal with the abuses, and as I mentioned, the quarantine helps to clean up those resources and have them, I mean, clean resources in the marketplace. So yeah, and we trying to improve all the time to make sure the service is reliable. Okay. Let's say it like that. And can you repeat the first question?
The other one was besides spam and spam house as the listing organization, what are other types of abuse that you're you know, DDoS for hire type of things?
Yeah, of course, all of these abuse cases. We just focused on the spam for this specific presentation, okay. But of course, spoofing, DDoSing, like anything related to you know, police, which is like more of a special cases, yeah. Like child pornography and everything like that. Okay. We deal with everything.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Like 5 minutes. We have like 5 minutes. Should I wait? So.
Any more questions?
Jeff Haas. Okay. Yep. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.